Welcome to part 2, looking at Python lists. And in this part we're going to look at doing a couple of exercises with integer values in lists. So once again I'm going to start by creating the list, and for this exercise we're just going to type in some random values. It doesn't really matter what they are. Okay, now so printing the list is going to be identical to printing the list of strings, and it prints like so. Now first little exercise we're going to do is we're going to find the maximum value, or the highest value in the list. Now before we do this, I want you to think about how, when presented with a list like this, are you able to pick out the highest value? So you look at it and we can see that 75 is the highest. So if I ask you, how did you do it? When I do this in class, most students will just say, we just know, I just look at it and I can tell because I know what's the highest. Some students might say they have a technique like they just look at the double-digit numbers because they know they're going to be higher. So there are shortcuts, but at the end of the day, the students are looking at it saying like, you just kind of know. And the reason you know, obviously, is that your brain has been programmed from a young age. You've been told how to compare values, 2 and 3. You're reading books, 2 apples, 5 apples or more. So your brain is programmed and has done this automatically for so many years that you probably don't think about the process that's involved. But as this is coding and computational thinking, and we have to break down things that we do automatically with our brain in order to reproduce them on the computer, we're going to have to think about a process. So let's just say all I know how to do is compare numbers and store numbers. Using those two skills, how do I find the highest number from the list? So you might want to pause the video here and see if you can write a flow chart or pseudocode even about how, if my two abilities I can do are compare numbers and decide which is higher, and store a number, how might I go about then picking out the highest value from a list like this? Well, let's set about it. So one technique is not allowing for the shortcuts with the digits. We take the first item from the list, and as it's the only item we've seen, we assume that's the highest item from the list. So I'm going to do that by saying max value, and I'm going to pick out the first item from the list using its index position, which is 0. Remember, we start at 0, not 1 for index values. Now what we're going to do then is going to go through the list using our for loop. So for num in my list, and what we're going to do is make a decision based on comparing the number on the list. So let's do it, let's step through it. So 32 is my known highest number. Is 4 higher? No, it is not. So we move on. Is 65 higher? Yes, it is. That's going to become my new max value. Is 62 higher? No, I move on. Is 75 higher? Yes, it is. That's my new max value. Then I compare to 3 lower, 23 lower, 56 lower, 45 lower, and I'm left with 75. So that's the logic behind it. Now let's do it. So for a number on my list, I'm going to say if the max value that we currently think is the max value, starting with the first item, if the max value is lower than the item we're currently looking at in the list, which is num, then we want to set the max value to, or assign it the value of the number we're looking at. So that's what this line is. So line 6, we're saying let's get our max value, compare it. If it's less than the number we're looking at as we cycle through the list, then the number that we're looking at becomes our new max value. So when I'm done there, I should be able to print max value and hit run. 75. Okay. Nice way to check this actually is to use the built-in function. So we're getting students here. You're writing a function that already exists in Python, and in Python we can get the max value of a list by putting it in the max function. So we put the list in the max function, and you'll see it's also 75. So a nice way to test this, if you're doing a function that already exists in Python, we can get the value of the built-in function and put a comparison, double equals, between that and the function we've just written, the variable that's storing the answer to the function we've just written. Hit run, and it should say true. So true there is just confirming that the function I've written is returning the same value, or not returning because it's not a function, It's just it's setting the variable to the same value as what it should be, the highest value in this case. So just test it by putting in a new highest value and see if it's still holding true, which it is. So my function is outputting the once again, it's not actually a function, apologies. My piece of code here, my loop, is setting the variable value to 93, and then I'm comparing it to the value from the built-in function that's returned as 93, and my variable that's set as a result of this little algorithm here is 93, and they're agreeing with each other. So all is good, and I know it's true. Now I'm going to look at that second way to iterate a list, which we looked at with strings also. So how might this look if you used the counter variable method, the for I in range method with the list? So for I in range, and we're going from 0 to the length of the list. And what we're going to do is we're going to say that instead of number, we're going to say my list at position I and my list at position I. So that's the only change. It doesn't change at all how the algorithm works. It's just, and I almost didn't spot my typo there, and all going well, it should still say true, which it does. Okay, let's do something slightly more advanced in terms of a few more steps, and we're going to get the mean average. Okay. So I'm going to show you the built-in Python function for this. So for doing this, we need to import the statistics module. And if I get this right, it's statistics.mean, and we type in the name of the list. And I'm going to print the average of the list. Statistics, left out the I. I had a feeling I was going to spell that wrong. Okay, 44 is the mean average. Okay, so now, so let's do this. So let's once again, if you want to pause, come up with a flowchart or pseudocode on how you might return the mean average. So what we do is we come up with a total variable that starts at 0, and then we go through the list. So for num in my list, and we say total should be assigned the value of total plus the numbers value, and then at the end of it all, we're going to print total and just check, does it look something onto what it should look like? 396, and then we're going to divide the total by the length, so the number of items in my list. And let's see, does that look about right? Yes, it does. Okay, so I can just say mean average equals this formula we have here, which is total divided by the length of the list, and then I'm going to print my mean average versus the built-in function. Now you'll notice there's a slight difference in that because I've used the division, my value has a 0.0 there. It ends up, once you divide it automatically float, but I think it should return still true, because it'll compare the integer and float value 44.0 and 44 as the same. Mean average, let's run that and see. True. Yep. Okay, so that's the second little task there, and if you can do those simple tasks, then there's a good chance that you have grasped the basics of cycling and iterating through lists.